Today, I'm going to talk about the Mumonkan case 11. Jôshû Examines the Hermits. And as Valerie mentioned, I'm working my way through the Mumonkan. Not all of them are being presented at Mountain Cloud. Some of them are at my own Zenkai, but we're working on making them available to everybody. Very happy to be back speaking to Mountain Cloud. Wish I was there with you. So welcome everybody who's joining us on the mountain and in the cloud. Jôshû, this is the case. Jôshû went to a hermit's hut and asked, "Anybody in? Anybody in?" The hermit thrust up his fist. Jôshû said, "The water is too shallow for a ship to anchor." Thereupon he left. Again, he went to a hermit's hut and asked, "Anybody in? Anybody in?" The hermit too thrust up his fist. Jôshû said, "Freely you give, freely you take away, freely you kill, freely you give life." And he made a profound bow. As always, Mumon gives some commentary on this. Each hermit thrust up his fist in the same way. Why is one accepted and the other rejected? Tell me, what is the cause of this confusion? If on this point you can say a turning word, then you will see that Jôshû's tongue has no bone. Now he raises up, now he thrusts down in perfect freedom. But though this is so, it is also true that Jôshû himself has been seen through by the hermits. Furthermore, if you can say there is a distinction of superiority or inferiority between the two hermits, you have not yet the eye of realization. Neither have you the eye of realization if you say there is no distinction of superiority and inferiority between them. And Mumon offers a verse. The eye is like a shooting star, the activity like lightning, a sword that kills, a sword that gives life. So, we'll start with Jôshû. Jôshû is familiar to many of us. Jôshû is Jôshû Jushin. Born in 778 AD, he taught from 858 to 897. And he died at the age of 119 or 120 as the Chinese count ages. He is named for the small city of Jôshû where he taught at what was at the time a very shabby monastery, although it's now very large and famous. And many of you will have heard numerous stories about Jôshû. He is one of the most well-known and admired Zen masters in Chinese history. The koans in which he is featured fall into 4 broad periods of his life as a Zen practitioner. They begin with his early encounters with his own teacher, Nansen. An example of this is Mumonkan, case 19, where Jôshû asked Nansen, "What is the way?" How many of you have asked that question? What is this that we're doing? So we see there Jôshû struggles to see the way clearly. Then there are a series of koans in which Jôshû and Nansen are well matched and riff off each other like jazz musicians. An example is Mumonkan case 14, when Jôshû responds to Nansen's story about killing a cat. "If you had been there, I would not have had to kill the cat." The fourth period is after Jôshû was settled down teaching after the age of 80. And there are many, many koans in this period about Jôshû with his own students. And the most famous of that, of course, is Mumonkan, case 1, Jôshû's dog. But this case that we're talking about today is from the third period of Jôshû's life. After his master Nansen has died, when Jôshû was in his late 50s, he spent over 20 years wandering from monastery to monastery and seeking out teachers and solitary hermits to continue to develop and check his own understanding. Even after 30 or more years of practice, he was not yet satisfied with his own readiness to begin to guide disciples. Knowing this fact underscores my own need to continue to further my practice. The two hermits in this koan, whose names we do not know, would have also completed their training under a teacher and gone off to practice alone and further develop their clarity. They too would have benefited from the opportunity to meet a wandering monk and engage in what we call Dharma combat. And I imagine, because we know about these events, that they were both moved in some fashion by the encounter to either record it in writing or tell the story to someone else. So, a reminder of the case. Jôshû went to a hermit's hut and asked, "Anybody in? Anybody in?" The original Chinese has two possible translations, the other one being, "Is anything there? Anything there?" A hermit's hut is very small. Jôshû could likely have seen the hermits from the doorway. He's not wondering if the hermit is home. He's asking each hermit to present essential nature, Buddha nature. He's asking, are you there? Are you completely and fully present? Are you absolutely empty or absolutely full? And what really is the difference in those two states of mind? Absolutely empty, absolutely full. Can you discern that? The first hermit thrust up his fist. Jôshû said, "The water is too shallow for a ship to anchor." Thereupon he left. This sounds like a very strong rebuke. It appears to be saying, "I am a great ship and you are no match for me." Again, he went to a hermit's hut and asked, "Anybody in? Anything there?" The hermit too thrust up his fist. Jôshû said, "Freely you give, freely you take away, freely you kill, freely you give life." And he made a profound bow, by which I presume is meant that he prostrated. So in contrast to the first hermit, this sounds like very strong praise. Jôshû appears to be saying to the second hermit that he has the power to cut off all delusions and bring someone to clear enlightenment. On the surface, it appears that both hermits responded in the same way, but that there was some subtle difference that leads Jôshû to praise one and belittle the other. One can ask, what might Jôshû have seen to have him react so differently to these two hermits? I have heard Zen described as the subtle culture. When there is even the slightest taint of intellectual activity marring a clear eye, it is described as the hair's breadth of difference. That is the difference between heaven and earth. Jôshû has a keen eye and can discern someone's state of mind based on the slightest of differences in expression, intonation, posture, and who knows what else. This koan invites us to examine our own discernment. To what degree do you trust your discernment? But Jôshû's not just considering how the hermits responded to his opening gambit. Is anybody there? Is anything there? He's also noticing how they respond to his second statement. The water is too shallow for a ship to anchor. Freely you kill, freely you give life. How might the hermits react to that? Disappointment, anger, pride. How would you react to such statements from Jôshû or from your own teacher? Jôshû may be looking to see if they are destabilized by praise or disparagement. Do they react with signs of ego? Do they recognize what he's up to? Jôshû may also be testing himself, checking that he can examine them without his own ego coming forward. And as Mumonkan said, the hermits are also examining Jôshû. Is he really expressing disdain or submissiveness? Or is Jôshû beyond such states? He knows that in truth, there is no distance, no difference at all between the two hermits. No hair's breadth of gap between the hermits and himself. So Mumonkan said, each hermit thrust up his fist the same way. Why is one accepted and the other rejected? Tell me, what is the cause of the confusion? If on this point you say a turning word, then you can see that Jôshû's tongue has no bone. Now he raises up, now he thrusts down in perfect freedom. Here, Mumonkan is referring to Jôshû speaking well or poorly of each hermit. Jôshû's tongue has no bone means his words are uninhibited, for example, by thoughts of self or other, or good or bad. He speaks with complete freedom, meaning that he is free of attachment and aversion. Mumonkan goes on to say, but though this is so, it is also true that Jôshû himself has been seen through by the two hermits. As I said, they are examining him as well. Furthermore, if you can say that there is a distinction of superiority and inferiority between the two hermits, you have not yet the eye of realization. Neither have you the eye of realization if you say there is no distinction of superiority and inferiority between them. If there's a distinction of superiority and inferiority, that's based on an illusion of separation. If there's no distinction of superiority and inferiority, it implies that your state of mind doesn't matter. Everything's mushed together into a formless and meaningless gray. While it may seem on the surface that Mumonkan is contradicting himself with these two statements, he is simply pointing to the subtlety involved in discerning the true fact. Language derived from logic cannot grasp it. Mumonkan's verse. The eye is like a shooting star, the activity like lightning, a sword that kills, a sword that gives life. This is Mumonkan praising Jôshû. His eye is so quick at discerning the state of mind of the two hermits. It is like a shooting star. His ability to respond to them is as lightning. The sword that kills refers to a teaching that cuts off all delusions. It kills one's belief in being a separate and bounded self. The sword that gives life refers to a teaching that brings to life the whole of existence, like a pruning knife that brings a forsythia back into bloom. I have the impression from Mumonkan's verse that he is suggesting that Jôshû was not just engaging in Dharma combat with the hermits, but also transmitting a teaching, each suited to the one he was teaching. What might Jôshû have seen would have led him to respond to each hermit as he did? The the water is too shallow for a ship to anchor. Freely you give life. Under what circumstances might Jôshû's responses be a helpful teaching? It's not so easy to inhabit their world and see this for yourself. And to be honest, I'm not quite sure I'm there myself. But this koan is an invitation to enter into this world and explore it. It's an invitation to see how Jôshû's responses might be helpful in your own practice. Is anybody there? Is anything there? Thank you.